Hi, this is Manju. Today we're going to talk about how to describe the difference between an Excel cell, row, column, sheet, and workbook. When we talk about these items, I like to think about them in the context of a book. The workbook is the entire item, the entire file. It hits pages, words, sentences inside. The word workbook describes the entire file containing one or more sheets saved together. When you open a book, what you see are different pages. In a workbook, these are tabs. They are also known as sheets. A sheet is a single page or tab organized into rows and columns. As you can see, I'm on sheet number 1 right now. I can look at sheet 2, 3, 4, or I can add a new sheet, sheet 5. These are all part of the same workbook. Within each sheet, there are letters at the top and numbers along the bottom. When we are thinking of the vertical groupings, A, B, C, these are called columns. A vertical grouping of cells identified by a letter. You will not see anywhere where these are labeled with a number. These are always labeled with a letter. So if someone says, take a look at O, you know they mean column O, not row O. And similarly, these numbers indicate how far up or down on each tab to look. These are called rows. A row is a horizontal grouping of cells identified by a number. Row 6 goes from left to right. Row 15 moves from left to right. The intersection of a row and column is named using the column letter first, followed by the row number. This is called a cell. So if I take a look at this blank sheet, I would not read this as 12H, I would read this as H12. This cell would be A1. This cell would be T2. You can see that when I click on a specific cell, there's a little bit of a highlight to show me, okay, you're in column N and row 10. The other place to find the cell reference would be here in the top left corner. It's called the name box. So it's telling me, hey, this is called D3. The last thing I want to talk about would be groupings of rows, columns, or cells. If we look at a group of columns, this would be labeled as column C through H. So if I wrote that down in words, it would look like this, column C through H. But the way that I would label it would be like this. I'm using a colon. The colon represents through. This tells me that I've highlighted columns C through H. Similarly, if I want to describe a set of rows or a group of rows, I would say, it looks like I've highlighted rows 4 through 20. Let's highlight those in blue. That's how I would say it out loud, but when I want to label it, I could label it with this format, 4:20. Because there are numbers here, I know that I'm talking about rows, and there's a colon in between to say, I start at 4 and I go through 20, rows 4 through 20. Finally, sometimes you can get a group of cells. A grouping of cells will typically be in a form of a rectangle or a square. You'll notice the very first cell that you highlight is not colored in like the rest of them. That's to show this is where you started. It looks like I've highlighted cells F3 through J16. But what about I5 or G13? Those are highlighted as well. Whenever we want to label a cell range, we're going to use the very top left and bottom right cells. When I want to talk about the selection between those two cells, I would say cells F3 through J16, like this. That's it for our description of the difference between Excel cells, rows, columns, sheets, and workbook. Thank you.